Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Ruttama Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna, reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service. So, we are in the section where now the comparison of the living entities, the life's form, is being discussed by Kapila Muni. So, we come to text 32. Yes. Text 32. Arthagyat samshayas-cheta tatashreyan swakarmakrit mukta sangastato bhuyan adhogdhat dharmamatmanaha. Translation.
Better than the Brahman who knows the purpose of Vedas is he who can dissipate all doubts, and better than him is one who strictly follows the Brahmanical principles. Better than him is one who is liberated from all material contamination, and better than him is pure devotee who executes devotional service without expectation of reward. Purport. Arthajna Brahmana refers to one who has made a thorough analytical study of the absolute truth and who knows that the absolute truth is realized in three different phases, namely Brahman, Paramātmā, and Bhagavan. If someone not only has this knowledge but is able to clear all doubts if questioned about the absolute truth, he is considered better. Further, there may be a learned Brahmana, Vaishnava, who can explain clearly and eradicate all doubts, but if he does not follow the Vaishnava principles, then he is not situated on the higher level. One must be able to clear all doubts and simultaneously be situated in the Brahmanical characteristics. Such a person who knows the purpose of the Vedic injunctions, who can employ the principles laid down in the Vedic literatures, and who teaches his disciples in that way is called Acharya. The position of Acharya is that he executes devotional service with no desire for elevation to a higher position of life. The highest perfectional Brahmana is a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava who knows the science of absolute truth but is not able to preach such knowledge to others is described as being in the lower stage, one who not only understands the principles of science of God but can also preach is in the second stage, and one who not only can preach but who also sees everything in the absolute truth, and absolute truth is everything, is in the highest class of Vaishnavas. It is mentioned here that Vaishnava is already a Brahmana. In fact, the highest stage of Brahmanical perfection is reached when one becomes a Vaishnava.
So now within the elevation, there is this beautiful comparison. Better than the Brahmana who knows the purpose of the Vedas is one who dissipates all doubts. Right? So better than him is one who follows the Brahminical principles. That means he has the knowledge, he is also can debate, and he is also following the. And better than him is also the liberated person from all material contamination. So all previous included plus liberated person. And the best is the pure devotee who executes devotional service without expectation of the reward. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes that Arthagya Brahmana means one who knows the absolute personality, absolute truth in the analytical study with three phases. Right? So, Brahmeti, Paramātmeti, Bhagavan iti Shabdate. And this is the very Guhyatama knowledge. And you will be really surprised to know that we discuss here, very frequently or very easily, is actually a very deep knowledge that there is Vadanti tat tattva vedas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdate. That the same absolute truth is reflected as Brahman, impersonal Brahman, Brahmajyoti, Paramatmeti, localized Paramatma, and Bhagavan iti shabdate. And big scholars of the Vedas, and even the big other people also, after prolonged studies, they will not come to this conclusion. We are able to come to this conclusion because of precisely because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityanand Prabhu, and then Shada Goswamis, and the mercy of them carried forward by Srila Prabhupada. Such a personality is considered to be highly situated, but he should be following the principles of the regulations, the Brahminical principles. Especially Brahminical principles here means 4 regulative principles, right? So that we have. So these are 4. So one should be following this very nicely. Then he is established very well. Then further, there is a learned Brahmana who can eradicate all the doubts, but also follows the Vaishnava principles. And then and such a personality is called as Acharya. What is the meaning of Acharya? So there are 2 terms here, Acharya and Pracharya. Pracharya means one who can do prachar very well. So he is called as Pracharya. Acharya means one who can do not only prachar, but he can do acharan also very well of what he is preaching. Right. Pracharya means he will, Prabhupada writes in one purport, he will say, don't smoke. And he will give a big lecture on don't smoke, and he himself will be smoking. So that is pracharya, means that is like he's only doing prachar, he's not doing acharan. So when there is a combination of acharya and pracharya, acharan and prachar, then that is a very powerful and a very unique combination. And this is how exactly Sanatana Goswami, he glorifies a Namacharya Haridas Thakur. That, that my dear Namacharya, you are not only knower of the absolute truth and preacher of the absolute truth, you also follow yourself whatever you are preaching, right? So this is how Sanatana Goswami is glorifying Namacharya Thakur. Srila Prabhupada says the highest perfectional stage of a Brahmana is Vaishnava. Brahmajanati iti Brahmana. But Vaishnava will not only know Brahman, he will also know Paramātmā, he will also know Bhagavan, and not only know, he will be actively engaged in devotional service, and he is in love with that personality, Bhagavan, and he cannot stop speaking about him. And therefore, highest perfectional stage is a Vaishnava. Text 33. तस्मान्मय्यर्पितशेष क्रिया अर्थात्मन निरंतर मय्यार्पितात्मना पुंसो मयि सन्न्यस्तत्कर्मणः न पश्यामि परं भूतम् अकर्तुं समदर्शनात्.
Translation. Therefore, I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything unto me without cessation. Purport. In this verse, the word samadarshana means that he no longer has any separate interest. The devotee's interest and the Supreme Personality of Godhead's interest are one. For example, Lord Chaitanya, in the role of a devotee, also preached the same philosophy. He preached that Kṛṣṇa is the worshipful Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the interest of his pure devotees is the same as his own. Sometimes Mayavadi philosophers, due to a poor fund of knowledge, define the word samadarshanath to mean that a devotee should see himself as one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is foolishness. When one thinks himself one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no question of serving him. When there is service, there must be a master. Three things must be present for there to be service: the master, the servant, and the service. Here it is clearly stated that he who has dedicated his life, all his activities, his mind and soul, everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is considered to be the greatest person. The word akartuha means without any sense of proprietorship. Everyone wants to act as a proprietor of his action so that he can enjoy the result. A devotee, however, has no such desire. He acts because the personality of Godhead wants him to act in a particular way. He has no personal motive. When Lord Chaitanya preached Krishna consciousness, it was not with the purpose that people would call him Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he preached that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and should be worshipped as such. A devotee who is most confidential servant of the Lord never does anything for his personal account, but does everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is clearly stated, Mayi samanyastah karmanaha, the devotee works, but he works for the Supreme. It is also stated, Maya arpitaha manaha, he gives his mind unto me. These are the qualifications of a devotee who, according to this verse, is accepted as the highest of all human beings. Hare Krishna.
Now Kapila Muni explains the further qualification of such a personality, such a highest human being. I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine. So his interests are one with the interest of the Supreme Lord, and therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything unto me without cessation. Right? So such a personality is extremely dear to the Supreme Lord. So very similar verses will come in Bhagavad Gita also. Bhaktaste ativa me priyaha. There the Lord is like about to melt only. It is Bhaktaste ativa me priyaha, the Lord says there. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Samadarshana means the devotee has no interest other than separate than interest of the Supreme Lord. That is called as Samadarshana. Previous verses we have seen, Bhinna Drik, Pratak Drik, Bhinna Bhavaha. These words have come. That having a separate interest, some other agenda than the agenda of the Supreme Lord. And this is very dangerous. That, we are working in a job, and if along with job, somebody is doing some moonlighting, this is considered as other agenda. In fact, this is one of the reasons why entire work from home culture suffered a great setback, and most of the companies are asking their people to come to the office and work from office now because people are working for 2, 3, 4 jobs at a time. I came across a person from Hyderabad. He was working for 7 jobs, and one of our devotee only, he's a director in that company. When you caught him, he also admitted that he is working for 7 jobs at a time. He was working. So this is Bhinnadrik. So, or Pritak Bhava. But a devotee is Samadarshana. Srila Prabhupada cites example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he preached. What is Chaitanya Mat? Chaitanya Mat is very clear. Aradhyo Bhagavan Brajeshatanaya Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachida Upasana Brajavadhu Vargenava Kalpita. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Pramanamamalam Premapumartho Mahan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhor Matamidam Tatradharana Aparaha. So this is the mat of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the interest of the devotee will be in sync with the interest of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada says sometimes Mayavadi philosophers, they get opportunity to define this word, Samadarshanaha. They say that, see, that means that such a person will see himself as the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada says this is due to their poor fund of knowledge and out of envy towards the Supreme Lord. If he to see himself equally on the platform of the Supreme, then there is no question of serving the Supreme. Because for service, there has to be 3 personalities. There has to be superior, and there has to be junior, inferior, and there has to be exchange of service. Similarly, there has to be Bhagavan, there has to be Bhakta, and there has to be Bhakti. Now, Bhakti is very elaborately explained, so there is no question of Samadarshana means one thinking oneself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. as it is misconstrued by the Mayavadi philosophers. The other words is akartuhu. Akartuhu means without the sense of proprietorship, right? So this is how the devotee is, without the sense of proprietorship. All that he is doing for the service of the Supreme Lord, and he has no separate desire or separate interest. And it is not that, sometimes we may feel that, what is this, Prabhuji? So much of a selfless service. Will the devotee not feel exploited or something? He is relishing, right? The devotee is not that, it is not that he is some grudgingly doing everything for the interest of the Supreme Lord. Just like the fish will cruise inside the ocean very effortlessly. That is very natural position. Similarly, for a devotee, it's a very, very natural position for a devotee to serve the Supreme Lord and follow the interest of the Supreme Lord. And he has, Prabhupada says, no other motive. And Mahaprabhu preached this. A devotee is most confidential servant, and he will do anything and everything for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, but literally nothing for himself. This is on the advanced stages of devotional service we are discussing. And here there is an example of Madhavendra Puri, who was very reluctant to ask even food for somebody. He was following this ayachita vritti, ajagada vritti. He never asked for also food. But when the Lord gave him the instruction to go to the Malaya and get the chandan, and he performed all that huge austerity of going to Malaya and getting the chandan. So this is a devotee, is the most confidential servant, and such a personality is Mayyarpita Manaha. He has completely given his mind to the Supreme Lord, and thus accepted as highest of all human beings. Text 34. Manasaitani bhutani pranamet bahumanayan Ishvaro jiva kalaya pravishto bhagavaniti. Translation.
Such a perfect devotee offers respect to every living entity because he is under the firm conviction that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has entered the body of every living entity as the Supersoul or controller. Purport. A perfect devotee, as described above, does not make the mistake of thinking that because the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Paramātmā has entered into the body of every living entity has become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is foolishness. Suppose a person enters into a room, that does not mean that the room has become that person. Similarly, that the Supreme Lord has entered into each of the 84 lakh particular types of material bodies does not mean that each of these bodies has become the Supreme Lord. Because the Supreme Lord is present, however, a pure devotee accepts each body as a temple of the Lord. And since the devotee offers respect to such temples in full knowledge, he gives respect to every living entity in relationship with the Lord. Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that because the Supreme Person has entered the body of a poor man, the Supreme Lord has become Daridra Narayana or poor Narayana. These are all blasphemous statements of atheists and non-devotees.
Yeah. Such a perfect devotee offers respect to every living entity. So naturally, because he sees his connection, he sees everybody's connection with the Supreme Lord, what happens is he becomes naturally Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Right? So Prabhupada therefore used to say, universal brotherhood is not possible without accepting universal fatherhood. So this is, the universal brotherhood. Why? Because he's able to see the Supreme Lord entering every living entity as Paramātmā. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that a perfect devotee will not make the mistake which Mayavadi make out of just making the thing so cheap. They say because the Lord has entered the body of a person, that means he has become like that. Prabhupada says it doesn't make sense. You enter the aeroplane doesn't mean that you become aeroplane or aeroplane becomes you, right? You enter the aeroplane and you come out of the aeroplane. Aeroplane exists, you also exist, right? So, but the Mayavadi philosophers, they make this mistake and they make the blasphemous agenda. Oh, the Lord has entered the Daridra person. So he's a Daridra Narayan. and so many. Prabhupada says all this is a very blasphemous agenda, and these are the agenda followed by atheists and non-devotees, and one should be careful from such an agenda. Right. Text 35. Bhakti-yogascha yogascha maya manavi udaradi yayo ekatareneva purusha purusham vrajet. Translation.
Translation. Okay, go ahead.
My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. Purport. Herein, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila Deva, perfectly explains that the mystic yoga system, consisting of 8 different kinds of yoga activities, has to be performed with the aim of coming to the perfectional stage of bhakti yoga. It is not acceptable for one to be satisfied simply by practicing the sitting postures and thinking himself complete. By meditation, one must attain the stage of devotional service. As previously described, a yogi is advised to meditate on the form of the Lord Vishnu from point to point, from the ankles to the legs, to the knees, to the thighs, to the chest, to the neck, and in this way gradually up to the face and then to the ornaments. There is no question of impersonal meditation. When by meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all detail, one comes to the point of love of God, that is the point of Bhakti Yoga. And at that point, he must actually render service to the Lord out of transcendental love. Anyone who practices yoga and comes to the point of devotional service can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental abode. Here it is clearly stated, Purushaha, Purusham Vrajet. The Purusha, the living entity, goes to the Supreme Person. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one. Both are defined as Purusha. The quality of Purusha exists both in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and in the living entity. Purusha means enjoyer. And the spirit of the enjoyment is present both in the living entity and in the Supreme Lord. The difference is that the quantity of enjoyment is not equal. The living entity cannot experience the same quantity of enjoyment as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An analogy may be made with a rich man and a poor man. The propensity for enjoyment is present in both, but the poor man cannot enjoy in the same quantity as the rich man. When the poor man dovetails his desires with those of the rich man, however, and when there is cooperation between the poor man and the rich man, or between the big and the small man, then the enjoyment is shared equally. That is like Bhakti Yoga. Purusha Purusham Vrajeta. When the living entity enters into the kingdom of God and cooperates with the Supreme Lord by giving him enjoyment, he enjoys the same facility or the same amount of pleasure as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the other hand, when the living entity wants to enjoy by imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his desire is called Maya, and it puts him in the material atmosphere. A living entity who wants to enjoy on his personal account and not cooperate with the Supreme Lord is engaged in materialistic life. As soon as he totals his enjoyment with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is engaged in spiritual life. An example may be cited here. The different limbs of the body cannot enjoy life independently. They must cooperate with the whole body and supply food to the stomach. In doing so, all the different parts of the body enjoy equally in cooperation with the whole body. That is the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bhed, simultaneous oneness and difference. Living entity cannot enjoy life in opposition to the Supreme Lord. He has to dovetail his activities with the Lord by practicing bhakti. It is said herein that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead by either the yoga process or the bhakti yoga process. This indicates that factually there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga because the target of both is Vishnu. In the modern age, however, a yoga process has been manufactured which aims at something void and impersonal. Actually, yoga means meditation on the form of Lord Vishnu. If the yoga practice is actually performed according to the standard direction, there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga. Hare Krishna.
Further, now Kapila Muni says, Bhakti yogascha maya manavi udar. Oh Manavi, who is Manavi? Daughter of Manu, and therefore is calling his mother. Oh my dear mother, oh Manavi, oh daughter of Manu. A devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way, what happens to him? Purushaha Purusham Vraje. Purushaha, such a personality, can attain the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that here Kapil Dev has perfectly explained the mystic yoga system. Now, mystic yoga system, what happens is, one is supposed to do all the Ashtanga yoga, the limbs, 8 limbs, yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. And we have very elaborately, Kapila Muni and Srila Prabhupada has discussed this previously, that yama and niyama will take care of one is on the right path and doesn't go to the wrong path. Then there is prana, then there is asana. Asana will give thairya to the body. Then there is pranayam. Pranayam will balance the vata, kapha, pitta, dosha within the body. Then there is pratyahar. Pratyahar will shut down the senses for the wrong inputs. Then there is dharana. Dharana is the general absorption on the Supreme. And then there is dhyana. Prabhupada says dhyana means avayava dhyana, taking very detailed darshan, meditating on the Supreme Lord, limb by limb. One is advised to meditate on the form of the Lord from point to point, Prabhupada says, from ankles to the legs, to the knees, to the thighs, to the chest, to the neck, and gradually coming up to the face and the ornaments. And thus, there is no question of impersonal meditation. So this entire idea of impersonal meditation, meditation on some jyoti, of course, we are not talking about here Trataka as the yoga practice that is done to improve one's eyesight and other things. This is something different. But attaining the goal of life through yoga process and yoga process trying to meditate on the something void is completely a mental speculation. Further, Srila Prabhupada says, by this meditation, one can come to the point of loving the Supreme Lord. Right? And after love, what is the manifestation of love? To love means to serve. So automatically there is a service in devotion, and that is devotional service. And this is how the yoga culminates to devotional service. Such a beautiful point it is, right? See, point here is how yoga culminates to devotional service. And therefore it is said, yogascha, bhakti-yogascha, yogascha. Prabhupada says there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga, you are directly loving the Supreme Lord. In other yoga, you are coming to the point of loving the Supreme Lord, and thus you are engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord. Then further Prabhupada says, Purushaha Purusham Brajet means that the living entity can enjoy on the same level and at times more than the Supreme Lord when he is in sync with the and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada says analogy can be given just like a rich man makes a friendship with a poor man. Then literally the facilities that the rich man has, the poor man can enjoy, right? If he is in the interest. Just like, somebody, there are rich people and they have some farmhouse and very luxurious farmhouse people will have in some Goa or Ooty or something like that, Kurg or somewhere. And the rich man may go there once a while, once in a year for 4 days, he may go and enjoy life. He will have the nice pond, he will have the personal swimming pool, he will have his own farm and everything else. But the person, the say the estate manager or the property manager, he is living in that property and practically all days in a year he's enjoying the same property. Right. Prabhupada says, therefore this analogy, like recently, Mukesh Ambani, he gifted his assistant a property worth 1,500 crore rupees, because he said that I am so pleased with your selfless service for so many years, some 30-40 years they are together and serving together, and he just gifted him, he just take this property. And so one can see that how. So similarly, Prabhupada says, when a living entity engages in the service of the Supreme Lord will share all his opulence, and the living entity will enjoy on the equal level. So all that he has to do is just to give up that Bhinnadrik, Ichha Dvesha Samuthena. On the other hand, Prabhupada says, if living entity wants to imitate the Supreme Lord and thus enjoy, this desire itself is called as Maya, and he is beaten black and blue by Maya. Kṛṣṇa bhuliya jeev, bhogavancha kare, nikatastha maya tara, jhapatiya dhare. But as soon as one changes one's desire, and with the change in the desire, there will be change in identity, and then, the opulence of Vaikuntha is available for the living entity. Further, Srila Prabhupada says that therefore, living entity should naturally serve the Supreme Lord. Just like the limbs of the body, they are engaged in service to the body. And recently I was hearing one very beautiful lecture where, it was being explained that the limbs of the body, they cannot exist without each other. And, there has to be a great cooperation, and then only the body, and then only the limbs also will be happy. Similarly, when the living entity serves the Supreme Lord, he can be completely happy and completely enjoy the life. So Prabhupada says this is how, either by yoga or either by bhakti-yoga, one comes to the same conclusion of devotional service. By bhakti-yoga, one is directly engaged in devotional service. By ashtanga yoga, one will develop, systematically come to the point of yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, then dhyana. Dhyana will lead to the appreciation of the Lord. Appreciation will lead to the love, and the love will be expressed in the form of service. And again is coming to devotional service. So factually, there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dando Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.